Over to ma'am.
Thank you, Ankur. A very good evening to everybody present here. So myself, I'm Tanushri Datta, presently a faculty at Indian Institute of Management, Ranchi. I have the privilege to be moderating the session today, and I have been engaged with IIT Kharagpur right from my PhD and until date. So the theme of today's session is employee engagement to create happiness and reduce empathy gap, which is very relevant to today's workplace. Empathy has a positive impact on employee engagement and consequently on employee satisfaction, well-being, and happiness. This in turn helps increase productivity in the workplace also. So attrition is also reduced. Earlier, empathy was devalued, but today with the passage of time, organizations have started realizing nurturing and developing empathic leaders. So today we have amongst us three eminent speakers to speak on this topic. We have Mr. Dhrubajyoti Dey and our very own Professor Mandal and Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik. I would request each panelist to put forth their views for 20 minutes, and we would begin with Mr. Dhrubajyoti Dey. But before we begin, I would like to introduce him. So he is an IPS officer and currently working as Joint Commissioner of Police in Barrackpore, Government of West Bengal. He is supervising metropolitan policing in the northern suburb of Kolkata for the last 2.5 years. He completed his education at IIT Kharagpur in 2001 and IIM Indore in 2005. His career initially started as program analyst and consultant in Cognizant and Wipro Technology. His journey as an IPS officer started in 2006. His other stints include being the DCP in Kolkata and Barrackpore, SP in Hilly District of Kalimpong, SP in CID, Anti-Corruption Branch and Traffic Wings. With this, I would like to invite Mr. Dey to share his views with us. Mr. Dey, the floor is all yours. You are muted. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. And a very good evening to all of you who have joined in this session. My voice will be a little cracking because I'm suffering from mild sore throat, but I hope that I will be able to go through the entire proceeding. Now, I don't have a PPT to share. What I will do is, my presentation will basically consist of three separate sections. The first one is, as a police officer, what is my perspective of having worked in police for last 15-16 years, and what is my view regarding having the environment of happiness in police stations and in the police units. The second section will basically cover the impact of such issues in policing, and of course, as policing impacts almost every citizen in the country, how it is affecting the public perspective about policing. And the third section will be basically covering the areas where we are working to improve upon the things. The first thing is that police officers take care of the life and liberty of the citizens. So they are the final guardian of these two very important fundamental rights of our citizens. But that also puts police officers in a very unique position. There's nobody else, no other organization can do the policing. They are unique, so they don't have any competitor. The only competitors are among states, among countries, among nations, and internationally. So it is between the police organizations only. There is nobody else who is competing with police to provide those typical services. So that also puts the police officers in a very interesting perspective with regard to the power equation between the customer, that is the citizen, and the providers, that is the police. So there is always a power disbalance. And this impacts the employee engagement to a very large extent. Because the moment a distressed citizen is there in a police station, the police officer very well knows that he does not have any other option except going to maybe court or the other commissions, for example, human rights commissions or women commissions, but they will also come back to police. It is not that they will provide the service. They will take care of the situation in a manner that the police officers are asked to follow as per law. So this is one of the issue which actually creates a very uneven kind of situation where the police officer has a lot of discretion. So this no alternative is something which affects the performance and also the well-being of the police officers. The second one is there are few things for which the police officers are well protected. For example, if during police action, if somebody crosses certain line, for example, if somebody is during arrest, some force is required. So legally, the person who is arrested is actually constrained to move, and it is an offense. Section 341 and 342 tell that these are wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement. But because it is done by the police on duty, these are not the crimes by police officers, these are duties. So certain acts of human beings which are otherwise crime is not crime when it is done by a police officer. And even if the police officer does other excesses, there is always a chance of having the government not giving consent for prosecution. That is under 197 CRPC. So these are the things where police officers very well know that in course of duty, if they do certain excesses, that will be protected if it is for certain interest and other things. So naturally, when a human being knows that he can cross certain line, that creates a distortion in his own understanding of his own environment, and that creates a serious issue in working environment otherwise. On the other hand, this super powerful police officer is staying in a police station where basic amenities are not available. They are not with their families, so they have already a distorted life. And also they are basically on job for 24/7. Whenever they are not on duty, they are basically on a reserve kind of a thing. Either they are in police line or they are in police station barrack, being ready for any emergency. Now, both these things combined, the concept of happiness in work is a bit different from another regular organization for a police personnel. So that is why a police person, for him, happiness is not in spending time with the families. They are basically trying to get leave even on important occasions, and these issues have to be taken into account when we are discussing about employee engagement and their well-being, especially in a police setup. And also see, there are certain activities which require the police officer to be suspicious of. For example, intelligence activities. Beyond the normal routinely movement of people, they will find pattern and other things to actually get into the minds of a criminal. So intelligence and investigation, these two basic functioning also at times interfere with the basic happiness issues, because the habit of having suspicion also spreads across his own family. At times I have seen that families of police personnel have much less trust on each other than a regular family. So these are the issues which also have a very serious impact on the employee engagement and happiness. But on the other side also, police has a lot of scope to serve people. That itself is a very significant parameter of having a happy work life, and also having the flow concept in happiness in investigation and also in working out with intelligence. These two things are also intrinsically happy, motivating activities for any dedicated police officer. So there are all sorts of issues with regard to the happiness in the workplace of police personnel. So when we discuss about their happiness, all these issues have to be kept in mind. Besides the regular things we normally discuss, we already see that for a happy person, we actually go for basic three things: that he has got decent level of living, a good social and family circle, and also have a job where he is meaningfully involved. So these three are almost like basic parameters of happy living. And in police, we can actually create some such situation where majority of police personnel will definitely be happy in their own workplace. Now, I have discussed matters with few police personnel who are due to retire, because in the last 2-3 years of their service, we try to provide them with the option of choosing their own units and where they want to work. Especially in Barrackpore police, we are doing it. And when we ask them, I have seen that about 2/3 of them do not have any choice. So they are merely existing in the organization. They don't have any particular feeling for the organization, and they want to get rid of sort of the engagement when they retire. So what I observed is that the engagement of an average police personnel with the departmental activities and the objectives of policing is almost at the nadir. In Barrackpore, I observed it in 2019 and 20. Unfortunately, COVID also was there by early 20s, so 2020. So we did not actually continue with the study because of certain other issues, because we could not physically meet. And then some of them have been, after giving a choice, we actually decided their posting so that their workload will be little less in the last few years of their service. But what I have observed is that this impact of the workplace disbalance in terms of the resources and other things, it has resulted in serious apathy towards the citizen, a common citizen. Whenever it is, the complaint is coming from a very powerful segment of the society, they are doing it, even maybe with a grudging face. But when it is coming from a common citizen, they are least bothered. So we have to actually think of certain avenues to actually improve this situation. Then alcoholism is a very important result out of this disbalance in the workplace I have seen in police. So employee engagement, when they are in terms of this issue, when the police is off duty, they are basically in the emergency reserve line and they are in drunken state. We have very serious issues in terms of putting them on duty. And if you ask for data, you will see that all departmental actions in the police units, out of all departmental actions, there will be almost half of the actions will be on the people who were either found drunken on duty or either or found in drunken condition in the barrack. So this is another issue where we have to be really looking into, and we are taking care of them in some manner, that we have made some groups and we are keeping it in close circles with regular discussion among themselves, and asking them to take one alcohol-free day one day. So that is the kind of intervention we are trying to have. Then we have a lot of ladies coming into police in last 10 years. And in this situation, they are also finding it very difficult to be engaged in the regular policing with the kind of infrastructure and the resource in hand. So, and also I have seen that a number of senior officers, depending upon their priorities and personalities, have been able to actually influence upon this employee engagement. Many senior officers, I will name one or two. One I have seen, K. Vijay Kumar, he was from Tamil Nadu cadre, and another is Shri Abhay, who retired as Director General in Odisha recently. they have been quite successful in improving the employee engagement in terms of engaging even the families to a large extent to policing, because many a time we say that police is citizen in uniform, and the citizen are actually police without uniform. So the more we have people who help police in their daily activities, the basic standard of policing actually improves. In terms of empathy gap, what I have studied in empathy is that actions are basically many a time dependent upon the state of the human being, and it is very evident in policing, day-to-day policing, that whenever a police personnel is in good state of mind, he has got good news of any good news from his family, or has done something good, or has been rewarded of late, his reaction to a citizen's complaint will be very different from an average one. So it is really important that the empathy gap is taken care of, and most of the officers are made aware of this gap in their behavior. So we are trying to organize workshops with the young officers, the middle-aged ones, and also the officers who are due to retire in 5 to 7 years, basically preparing for their second innings outside policing. We have started with all these three groups, and Professor Patnaik knows that with the young officers, we have started workshops in well-being with Rekhi Centre for the young entrants in the service. And for the uninitiated, I'll say that the sub-inspectors in police are the actual police officers. And in many instances, if we can take care of the sub-inspectors to a large extent, the larger chunk, that is the constabulary and head constables and the assistant sub-inspectors, they can be taken care of very well, because in police, leadership has much more visible impact on the subordinates than maybe in other organizations. And what I have seen is that the moment a police station is headed by a police officer with a good knowledge about his own state of being, and if he is a successful and happy person, then that actually transmits to the entire unit, and all of a sudden it looks rejuvenated for the average citizen. So we are hopeful that in time to come, especially in Barrackpore, because it is slowly maturing up to become a metropolitan police unit, we hope that in time to come, maybe in 3 to 5 years, the basic standard of policing will improve, the employee engagement will be much better, and for an average citizen, the results will be visible, and they will actually see the changes for themselves. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. That was really very interesting, and the way you got us introduced to the life of a police and the difficulties that they face and how they actually have to work in coordination with the normal citizens and do their work was really very, very interesting. So there's something which is being discussed about these days is about positive policing. So it basically draws inspiration from the field of positive psychology only, and they emphasize on the on developing positive relationships with citizens. So the idea being that if they are able to develop positive relationship with citizens in general, and they are able to influence them in reducing the amount of crime, so even if one arrest is reduced, so statistically that shows up to be significant over a period of time. So that's one idea that people are working about these days, right? So do you think that would be a very nice area where which, academicians and your organization could actually come together in working towards how one can develop positive relationship on both sides, right? And they actually nurture it. There's some trust. There is a change of perception on how the police views the individual and the individual views the police.
Yes, to a large extent, actually in West Bengal, for about last 20-25 years, we have got a local committee known as Thana Samanvay Committee. It's basically a group uh, with the local people, along with the police officers in the police station, and especially the opinion makers in the society in the local area. They are part of the group. But many a time, this has got political ramifications. So many a time, these are non-functional. But of course, if we can engage the larger society in day-to-day policing and taking care of the police personnel's welfare to a good extent, that at least matters are observed and they are taken to the right authority for the resolution or the solution, then the standard of policing is bound to improve. And the local people, if they come to know about the police process, then it will be very easy to actually see whether the discretion used by the police officer is for good or bad. That judgment by the society, if it is done as quickly as well, then the standard of policing is bound to improve.
No, I think, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
What you have been mentioning and what Professor Datta has been mentioning, these are two different models actually where academicians can pitch in, because as of now in policing we only talk about some kind of stress, conflict, deficiencies in policing, but we haven't touched upon the good side, brighter side, I mean the other side of policing through a different lens and framework. If we see that, probably they are doing a better job than a person who has been otherwise engaged in some kind of white collar job. So, what I want to answer Professor Datta is that by giving them lessons on positive psychology, I don't think we will be able to help them more engaged, because it would be more of a masking effort. First, we have to make sure that their problem is de-intensified, to a great extent neutralized through the basic mechanism. Because we all know the reduction of dissatisfaction does not enhance our satisfaction. So therefore, I think we have to have a two-way model. One model is to make sure that their basics are fulfilled, and for that the government has to take care of it. And on the other hand, we have to make sure that their side, their contribution to the society has really been recognized. How best we can reflect that part through, several kinds of activities would also be helpful, rather than only teaching them, telling them through academia what is positive psychology or what is happiness. Because happiness cannot be pursued. It can only be created. If they learn how to create it, they will be able to sustain it. If we force them to pursue it, probably they would not be able to sustain it. That's my experience in armed forces as well.
I think basically when you're talking about positive policing, they are trying to say that it requires a change of perception and mindset in both ways, so that you tend to perceive the police in a positive way and the police tends to perceive you in a positive way. So that change in thought process, which is basically a change in the mindset, that also probably would help things be better, rather than the police always looking at people in a suspicious way, and there is a distance that's been created in a very subtle way. If that bridge could be somehow reduced, so probably both sides would tend to gain from it. So maybe that's the concept that they're trying to bring in by bringing in a concept of positive policing. So it's still in the West. I mean, they're trying to work it out. Let's see.
Now, I don't think we should make a comparison with the West, because the West is even worse. West is even worse. They have a lot of things to show, but I think our kinds of, I don't know, Mr. Dey can refer to what is the citizen police ratio. I mean, in US it is generally 1:223, something like that, if I correctly remember. What is the ratio here in
Sir, the UN suggestion of the police people ratio is, for every lakhs of population, we need about 222 police personnel. That is the suggestion. That is the average, a good average. In India, we have the half. It is somewhere around 100 to 110. In West Bengal, it is somewhere around 100 plus, but that is more concentrated in the urban area. So for the rural areas, it is worse.
That's the problem. I had worked for 10 years with stress in military. I mean, I will not be able to tell what I'm not supposed to dive on, but certain things which are public, I can definitely share with you. One thing I have noticed, generating happiness and retaining killer instinct is a difficult ballgame, because police or military must have I mean, they must be perceived that, well, they can punish you in case if you are wrong. That potential has to retain. So, what I faced in engagement, both in, I'll come back to scientists as well. I had a different trouble with the scientists. I found that, well, it's very difficult to retain their level of happiness at the same time their killer instinct. I mean, they don't coexist. They are so orthogonal to each other, and unless you are very trained in mood management, I don't think that's the reason why what I found that when a security personnel goes back home, he is equally reprimanding type. I mean, he is sulking all the time. He is shouting at his family, because a person cannot divide himself or herself in two different ways. One way in the office, one way back home. So if we have to help them coexist, we have to train them how to manage their mood. I mean, that's where the empathy gap as a concept comes. Because empathy gap is nothing but a state marker. It's a state marker, it's not a trait marker. And at a given state, you are compelled to behave in a given way without, just overlooking the far-sighted issue that may create trouble for you. So all addicts have got this empathy gap. They don't believe what will happen tomorrow. Right now, I have got to do this, I'll do this. So most of the things are happening in this way. How to help them coexist is a scientific challenge, rather than giving them some sermons on how to be happy, because it's neither a choice nor a compulsion, I can tell you. Because if you compel them to be happy, they can't be happy. You can't pursue happiness. You have to create it. And if you give it a choice, they don't know whether to avail the low-hanging fruit, that is some kind of impulse. I mean, like bribe. It's a kind of impulse. It's a low-hanging fruit. Or retain the morality. I would rather ask Mr. Dey this question, that this controversy of loyalty and versus morality. I mean, whether in armed forces we want loyal people. Do you want moral people in police forces?
Sir, to answer this question, what I will say is that policing is more of a service than what we perceive it as a force. 90% of policing job is basically service. So we need more morality than loyalty, because in day-to-day policing, we do not need a clear instinct much. Maybe it is in insurgency areas or in some other areas where the personnel who is performing duty will have to definitely develop that clear instinct, but otherwise his survival will be at stake. But for day-to-day policing, especially in metropolitan areas, we need people who can question themselves well, what they are acting, what the way they are acting. So morality is very, very important in policing, because it is a much ingrained part of the society. It is not outside the society. The insurgency areas and the difficult areas do not have normal social functioning or structure. But day-to-day policing is a part of the normal society. It will not go off. And it needs more morality than loyalty. Loyalty will come automatically because the entire policing is guided by code. It is CRPC. Mostly it is CRPC. And there are regulations in the states. For example, in Bengal, it is police regulations of Bengal. And most of the things, how they serve, how they protect themselves, everything is almost given in details in those regulations, where this problem of morality versus loyalty will not come, because most of the police officers, if they are loyal to the constitutional requirements, they will be morally correct.
But there are many situations where conflict does exist. I mean, many situations, because following constitution, I mean, they can't behave in a robotized manner. At times they will be human as well, and human beings are subjected to all kinds of influences. We do not have any training how to control our impulse. I mean, impulse control is a very big thing. Impulse control. So I think impulse control is it's a tool. It's a psychological tool. It can be people can be trained in impulse control. How to do that? And there are so many tests, social experiments, like I can tell it to see also. The marshmallow test actually is a impulse control test. It's basically, we can easily test them who is going to have it. Now, therefore, the question is, when we get someone into a job, if we only bank on their aptitude, we'll never get to know their attitude. That's another fundamental problem. In India, we all talk about employee engagement, because anywhere that where I have gone, people say that the whole organization is running with only 25 to 30% of the people. They are effective, and that's why the organization is running. I'm not referring about armed forces. That's a different kind. So the question is why it is so. The root is a problematic thing. I don't say that we have to test integrity. That's not important. I think Louis has joined. Hello, Louis. How are you? I'll get back to you, Louis. So the problem is that how we can actually get people who have a perfect synchrony between their attitude and aptitude. And there are mechanisms, there are tests, there are selection systems, there are process. We do it. We believe, we the Indians believe, that to get into a job we require aptitude, but to sustain in a job we require aptitude. But the question is there any training which is available where we can actually sustain our attitude and kind of engagement that we are looking for? So I think here there is a lot of opportunity, what Professor Dr. was mentioning. that there is a possibility of academia-industry partnership. And this partnership, let us remember that we are not polar opposite. We do not try to, we should not try to be compatible to each other. Our complementary capabilities must be taken into cognizance before we actually structure a training program. As of now, what we have been doing, we have been giving people some assignments. This will not work. I mean, maybe momentarily this will work. But for a long-term plan, we have to understand that, well, the two groups of academia and the organization, they have their own strengths and weaknesses, how we can help them coexist in a complementary manner with certain capabilities that academia does have and certain capability work, because real life experiential learning is with police. I mean, with the security personnel. When I refer about police, I'm not talking about state police. It involves CRPF, CISF, SSB, BSF, all kinds of policing. I'm trying to tell. So you will find that majority of the patricides and suicide cases are coming. One of the greatest reasons is that people don't find it very easy to disengage themselves from the work as well as home. So at times, as a scientist, we often ask this question, whether as a government service, we should be passionately detached or dispassionately attached. What should be our role? I also used to ask a scientist, are you a scientist first and government officer later, or you are a government officer first, scientist later? Like in police, are you a police first and a government officer later, or you are a government officer first, police officer later? Because a lot of such controversies have come up in several cases in post-disaster conditions. People take their own decisions, go beyond rules, and suffer a lot. And they have the evidence with them. That distracts them from their way of working with integrity and passion and engagement.
Professor Patnaik had raised his hand long time back, so he couldn't break the conversation. So if you could say what you wanted to say.
Thank you, Tanushree. I believe that I will make my observations very brief and focused because Louis has joined, and I will also at the end kind of link it up with other areas of focus. It is a real good fortune for all of us that we are concentrating on a particular area where we have a little bit of experience and we have a little bit of exposure. Where we would be able to share certain insights we have gained as part of the Rekhi Center, which has interacted with the police force. So one of the important areas that has been discussed, of course, and which I would like to share with you is that when it came to feedback and when it came to our perception of areas which need a certain degree of training or interaction, that happens to be in the field of communication, especially not only interpersonal communication and nonverbal communication. And for two reasons. One is that they found nonverbal communication very exciting and fascinating. They found it relevant for themselves. But the aspect of interpersonal communication is something which this discussion has concentrated on, which is I'm raising these questions which could be areas of exploration, that what kind of a police officer are we comfortable with when we are talking about the general public. And the point raised by Professor Mandal was very, very pertinent, that do we want a friendly police officer really, or is it, I mean, it's not a question of us wanting, but the situation requiring, demanding a friendly and amicable police officer or a person who seems to be imposing, threatening, commanding, because in most crisis situations, this predicament would be there. So there would be different contexts where different kinds of responses would be required. And that's an area which could be explored to find out in terms of perception, in terms of expectations, and in terms of how people react to those critical situations. I'm reminded of the story of the vicious serpent whom the sadhu had kind of baptized and told not to hurt anybody. And once the children knew that the serpent was innocent, they really bait it up. And then the sadhu told that, who asked you not to impose, have an imposing appearance? I never told you that you should not hiss at the people. I asked you not to bite. So probably there is a thin line between hissing and biting, where the police force also is something where this interesting aspect could be explored. As you know, Professor Mandal, Professor Mr. Dey had invited me, and I made a one-day visit to some police stations, and I interact with the policemen over there. That brings me to another aspect of this employee engagement. One, I mean, it's important that we raise these points, was related to the working condition, which I found was very, very difficult, especially the living conditions. And the radical different treatment they get inside their circles and they get outside. So outside, the moment you see the policeman, he has a certain identity of a different kind. Inside his living conditions with the officers, I mean, they're knowing fully well the kind of situation they are in. You find that they're deplorable, they're very difficult, challenging, where they have sleep deprivation and all that. I got exposed to that experience with them. So one of the questions that I asked some of these young policemen was that, are you happy? And obviously, they could not answer that positively. Naturally, the job demands and the stress and all those things. One of the things which came out very strongly was, which is also, I mean, an important component in the context of employee engagement, was the bonding and the kind of friendship they had, kind of camaraderie they had. And I have a feeling that probably two things sustain them. One is this very strong network of relationship, saving one another during difficult and challenging times, being able to trust one another to take care of the other in challenging times. And the other one is the ability to realize that, I mean, this is one of the things that came out as very significant. And the other one is a sense of meaningfulness, a purpose, that I'm doing something which is meaningful. So Manas sir and Dhrubajyoti sir, what I've realized is that a policeman may not be happy. It's difficult for a policeman to be happy in the sense that we generally use the expression. But a policeman can feel satisfied, meaningful, purposive. And if he's linked strongly with his comrades, then that might give him a sense of sustained meaningfulness. So maybe at the center, one of the things that we need to focus on are these areas, rather than trying to make them happy. As Professor Mandal said, they could be superficial. I mean, and it could be short-lived. Whereas these kinds of development of bonds and a sense of meaningfulness and purpose could be more sustainable and could work better. These are just thoughts, because I have also interacted with them over a period of 2 trainings, and also when I visited. So these are just thoughts that are coming to my mind, and I felt like sharing. Thank you.
I think before we switch, go for presentation by Ilori, I just wanted to make a fine line of distinction. What do we mean by happiness at work? You see, there are 2 different things. One is that whether I'm having a happy feeling in my workplace, or whether I love my job. These are 2 different things. I'll give you an example of a soldier. The soldier was placed in, I gave this example in other occasions as well, placed at 19,000 feet. he had a difficulty. He wanted to connect his father. He could not do that because in 90,000 feet there was no signal service. So when I asked him this question, why are you depressed? He said that, sir, it's too cold. Anybody would not like to stay here. But then when I asked him this question, should I ask your boss to give you a leave and attend your family issues? He says that you are a boss. You can afford to say that, but I cannot afford to do that. I don't want to do this job. I don't want to leave my job. You can think any way you would like, but I love my job. So he loves his job, but he is not happy at the workplace. So workplace happiness is a concept that they do not have basics. It is a different issue. But whether a policeman loves his job or not, that's engagement. Engagement is not about whether he is getting enough support. Physical support, economic support, social support. That support, whether he is or she is getting it or not, is a different aspect altogether. But whether he loves his job or her job or not is a different aspect. I am only interested in telling that there is a fine line between these two things. These are, one you may call as job satisfaction, that you have got everything around you. That's your job satisfaction. But by having job satisfaction, I may not be happy as well, because I do not love my job. I can get everything, but I still don't love my job. It's also possible. I love my job. I'm not getting any support from anywhere. So we have to also understand these two concepts. A policeman would not be able to differentiate it. For them, it coexists. But we have to understand that whom we are going to train, recruit, select. We have to help them love their job rather than trying to make them happy in their workplace. I don't know what Mr. Dey would think about it.
So do I move ahead and invite Louis for the next speaker? And with a request to Mr. Dey to continue being with us, so he can share his ideas with us as we move along for the evening.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. I'll continue.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you, Louis, for making it. We were really worried, and we're so happy to find you again back and joining us. So let me introduce you first to the audience. So Mr. Louis is the founder and president of the World Happiness Foundation and World Happiness Fest. He is the author of Capitalism and the Exponentials of Happiness, director of the Gross Global Happiness Program at the United Nations University for Peace. Over the years, Louis has been an advisor to CEOs, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, Nobel laureates, political and institutional game changers on strategic personal positioning and brand building. He has also worked in the corporate world as a global executive and has been a protagonist of the transformation of industries such as professional services and the internet. Louis has been an international observer with the UN and OSCE in post-armed conflicts, establishing democracy and the right to vote. The floor is all yours now, and I request you to please take it over. Thank you so much for making it today.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. Tanu, and of course, I see you, Professor Mandal, Manas Mandal, Priyadarshi, Patnaik, and everybody here at the Rekhi Centre. It's always a pleasure. I've been learning a lot, listening to all of you. And when I was thinking about my focus, because my background is going out, zooming out, and then zooming in all the time. I like to see the big picture, but then I want to be very practical. What I thought is that maybe in these 15, 20 minutes, I want to be as practical as possible within a framework. So I would love to actually share with you one tool that I've been using lately to measure happiness and well-being in a really practical way. So this is what I want to do. And actually I'm gonna be asking you at the same time to do something. So, because this is gonna be an interactive opportunity for all of us. So I'm gonna be sharing my screen with you. And I think that you see my screen, that you see capitalism on the screen. Yes. Okay. So here, what you can see on the top of the screen is one website. It's called www.menti.com. So I will ask all of you to actually go to that website, and you can do this on mobile phone or the computer. And when you get there, you have to introduce the code 3109910. So when you go to menti.com, then you can use the code 3109910. And if you do that, then you're gonna see this exact slide there. And what I'm gonna be asking you to test the system is that you click on the heart that you see on the bottom right. Yes, I see one heart now. Because that's the way we are gonna be interacting. Okay, perfect. I see already 2 hearts. Fantastic. So please just get into the system. And yeah, 3 hearts, fantastic. Okay, so this is, I mean, we're gonna try. So I have a few slides when I'm gonna be showing, and then I'm gonna be asking you for something, okay? So I see 6 people in the system. I give you some time and we can move on, because we're gonna be talking about happiness at work and in life. And I'm gonna be using this framework in order to see if this is something that we can use going forward. Just let me tell you that I've been using this system now for different companies, because I do some consulting, and one of the big companies I've been advising to is the sports brand Nike. And we've been going deeper, and this is very interesting because Nike now is introducing the concept of yoga as part of the portfolio. And you know, Nike is all about high performance, and now they are going to be talking about yoga. So we wanted to be sure that the team was aligned from values and from their own personal interest into one space that when we think of high performance and yoga, we have to explain how that works. So actually that's part of the exercise that I did with the whole team in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, in order to understand how the team itself had to be super aligned to the new products that they were going to create, because the expectations of that team that was hired to run yoga within a high performance company with no yoga apparel was a big challenge. And that's built on this 76% of people expecting more, in this case for the companies. So imagine here people coming to do something where they are super aligned because they normally do yoga outside. What are they going to be expecting from Nike in order to help them achieve their goal? Something else that we know, and this is the base of this framework, is that around 40% of people, and this is based in the United States, are leaving their jobs. So this is a big deal, because 4 out of 6 people voluntarily are leaving their companies because of burnout, because of change of perception of what's going on in their lives. And then this is something coming from Indeed data, and we see this happiness decline through the pandemic. But at the same time, what we are seeing is the increase of stress. So this is something very interesting, because how do we deal with this when we are talking about happiness, well-being, and so on? So this is the first question that I want to ask you. And this way we can test this framework. And it's based on about 20 questions. So this is the first question, and this is a question that I ask normally to these teams, is when I think of happiness at work, I feel happy most of the time. So this is a question for you. So imagine that we are a company here, or maybe even in our jobs, in our current job. So you can answer this the way you want. It's either testing the framework or actually becoming a case and say, well, when I'm at work, I feel happy most of the time. And in this case, as you see, I give you some time to answer, it's around 7.1. You will see the scale. We are expecting, in order to have a constructive environment and really build into the future, rates above 8. So you would see that everything that is below 7, 6, 5 is something that is giving us the sense of where to focus our work. Another important KPI in this case for happiness, overall happiness, is compensation. So the question here is, I am paid fairly for my work. How do you feel about this? Are you paid fairly? This is something that we know from the research that is a key factor. Once the key factor is covered, then we move into another level. But this is one of those factors that has to be covered for sure. So this is about compensation. Thank you so much for answering. Let's move to the next question. Achievement. I'm achieving most of my goals at work. This is something that we all know becomes very relevant, especially for jobs that are not goal-oriented. Because if they are goal-oriented, we are always going to be achieving. But if they are not goal-oriented, this becomes a key factor for people to materialize. So thank you. Then when we answer everything, we are going to see the full picture here. Another key factor of overall happiness is appreciation. The question here is, there are people at work who appreciate me as a person. So there we have the first answer. This is above 8.5. So this looks like one of those factors that is really interesting and important for us and actually is fulfilled. Let's move to the next one, energy. This is a very important, because when we talk about energy, it looks like a very kind of broad. But in this case, this is one of those elements that really determines future and sustained happiness. In this case, the question is, in most of my work tasks, I feel energized. I feel that they are giving me the opportunity to thrive at work. We see here 5.5. Thank you so much for answering. Let's go to the next one, support. There are people at work who give me support and encouragement. I see that. Yes. Then we can make an analysis of this company, right? But this is very similar and very linked to the question before about appreciation, but it's different as well. Purpose. My work has a clear sense of purpose. This is one of those factors that there is quite a lot of research going on, and this is very much linked to all the positive psychology space, the meaning at work and the meaning of my life, and the meaning is very much linked to why am I doing what am I doing. So thank you so much for answering. Let's go to the next one, learning. I often learn something at work. Another key factor for people to feel fulfilled. And there we have 8.6. Thank you for answering. Let's go to the next one. Inclusion. My work environment feels inclusive and respectful of all people. Thank you for answering. Okay, there we go. That we are going a bit. This is one of those factors that is becoming more and more relevant in the workplace. We know this is very much linked to belonging, as well as the whole space of disability, access, equity, and inclusion. Flexibility. My work has the time and location flexibility that I need. Okay, this is something interesting as well. It goes beyond. This is one of those very important factors during COVID. And we learned that from commuting, some people were saving hours of time, and that made people very happy in many ways during COVID. Trust. I can trust people in my company. This is another key critical factor, and this is very much linked to accountability in many ways. And actually something that I've seen in many companies is that some of them are becoming very stressful and with low levels of trust. So that requires a lot of intervention when you have and you get to that point. Belonging is another factor. I feel a sense of belonging in my company. How do you feel about this one? Very interesting how we are going here from below 6, close to 5, to above 8.7. Here we are more in the middle, 6. And then you can see here that we have people that are 3 and a few people that are 1, 1, 1. So this is something that once we analyze the results for the companies, we can really go deeper into specific interventions. This is one of the last ones, management. My manager helps me succeed. What do you think about this? And as we all know, the manager in most of occasions at work becomes critical for people to stay or leave the company. In some companies, it determines more than 80% of the decision to stay at one company is who is my manager. In this case, it's 5.2. So let's go to satisfaction. Overall, I am completely satisfied with my job. What do you think about this one? .3. Stress-free. This is the next one. I don't feel stress at work most of the time. Do you agree or disagree? This is a very important one because we know that it has direct impact to happiness. The more stress and not having the tools to self-regulate, it definitely makes a huge impact in our happiness overall. So this is about feeling it, then having the tools to self-regulate. Okay, so thank you so much for the questions. Then we are gonna go into the final part of the presentation and the analysis of why this framework might be helpful. This is basically the scale from 49 or lower is low, 80 or higher is high. Above the average is between 70 and 79. And this system now is being used by Indeed in many countries. And now they have millions of people answering exactly the same questions. So actually we can correlate those answers by industry and by country as well. So this is, I think, the most important, I would say, finding here. And essentially, once our basic needs are met, the important shifts to our happiness and well-being overall. So this is one of the key learnings. Basic needs, paid fairly, appreciation. That's key into these jobs. But once you have appreciation and paid fairly covered, you jump to the top of the pyramid. And what is most appreciated are energy, belonging, and purpose. And then you have everything in the middle, and we can analyze and we can intervene in all that. But we move from basic needs to more elevated needs. And this is very important because I am the manager of this company. I know that if I don't have paid and appreciation covered, it's going to be very difficult to do a lot. When I work on that, then I'm going to be moving into energy and giving meaning and belonging to my team and the overall company. So the research is showing that feeling energized, having a sense of belonging and purpose are even more important to overall well-being than pay and flexibility once we get that together. So this is very, very important because it's something that is not clear to everybody, but those are correlated at the same time. And this is an average of all the data from 2000, in this case, 21. So in general, companies with high happiness are score higher across all dimensions. So these are another data very interesting. Is overall, high levels of happiness are correlated to all the factors. So so these are 4 pillars really important in order to keep doing research and recommendations for companies. There are more expectations at work today than ever before. The need of happiness is becoming universal. What actually drives happiness at work is very much linked to purpose, belonging, and that sense of energy, covering basicness. And then we really need strategies with key KPIs for employees to take action. And this is where consultancy and advisory plays a big role in the companies. And something very important as well is that we always think and we always talk is who is responsible for this? Is the company, is the employee? And basically we know that it's both. So if you as an employee want to be happy at work, you have to start. And that's the beginning. But it's true as well that if you are in an environment that is toxic and doesn't help you to thrive, that's going to have an impact on you. So I think that in this case, conditions as well as decisions about your personal happiness are key. Okay, so that was kind of my presentation, and I'm open to Q&A. I use this slide just to pay attention if people want to get access to the World Happiness Academy. We have a lot of resources that we've been co-building as well. I still remember the seminar that we did with IIT during the COVID with all these sessions, 5, 6 sessions. They are for free accessible on the World Happiness Academy. So I don't know if you have any questions, but that was my presentation.
Well, that was really very nice and informative. Enjoyed the type you developed the questionnaire, which was also very interactive. So I just have a question. They usually say that, the employee does not leave the organization, but the employee leaves the manager. So it's usually when relationships don't work well with the managers, the people usually tend to quit and move to some other organization. Probably they are not very unhappy with the organization per se. But if you look at the organizations, they always have a tendency to bring in policies and things to keep the employee engaged and employee happy. But the dynamics is probably very different. So what's your opinion about it?
Yes, I feel that as life and the world, there are interconnections. So for example, I agree that people leave the manager. I agree as well that whomever recruited that manager, they did it for a reason. And maybe the reason is based on the way they appreciate power, the way they appreciate the profiling aligned to values. So we know that there are companies, and normally that's created by the CEO, the founder, and the board, that bring a lot of toxicity to the organization because of the processes, because of the way they see the world. There are other companies that are all about growing people, giving them opportunities, and they create processes that are really focused on maximizing everybody's potential. What I've seen many times as well is that some CEOs come, they create an environment, processes, and they leave, and those processes stay with people not understanding them. So people inherit, in this case, processes, and they didn't create them. And if they were not personally aligned on the building of those processes, that's create a complete disalignment that then is going to have a ripple effect in the whole organization. So I think that this is very important, because it's not just about one person or one manager. It's about the way you compensate growth, the way you create your evaluation process. What do you actually value when you give a bonus? Normally companies give bonus because they sell more. Well, selling more requires in many ways more stress because you have to do more. So I think that there is a big correlation, and this is the challenge of having a for-profit company in this world that we are living in, that you are completely focused on sales, and that's the ultimate value. And when you are completely focused on sales, many companies miss the point about how do I treat my managers, because I am expecting my manager to sell more, and these managers are going to put all the pressure on everybody, and that's going to create a lot of stress. And if the manager is not really good, he is going to create so much pain in many of these people that they are going to be selling more by force, not by strength. So that's a key factor. So I think the answer is not black and white. The answer is a rainbow of opportunities, and that's why culture building, the analysis of the culture of the company, the systems in place, the processes, and the way they compensate, especially, and reward is very, very important.
Thank you so much. So I think we'll move to the last speaker of the day and then come back again for a panel discussion. So with this, I would like to invite Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik. He is a professor of English and Communication at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and is also the chairman of Rekhi Centre of Excellence for the Science of Happiness at IIT Kharagpur. He was also the secretary of the Nehru Museum of Science and Technology at IIT Kharagpur. His areas of research include Indian aesthetics, visual and multimedia communication, music and emotion perception, communication and culture, text and intermediate translation, and digital humanities. He also works in communication related to generosity and end-of-life care. His interest in visual arts, poetry, fiction, and music also get integrated with his research and extends to various explorations into the realm of social media as well. Professor Patnaik has authored and edited more than 14 volumes of text, references, and creative works. He has a number of research papers, translations, poems, short stories, illustrations, and photographs in many national and international journals. Sir, I request you to please take over from here.
Thank you, Tanushree. What I would like to say very briefly is that I'm not a man from this area of expertise, so I'll be raising more questions than trying to give a talk. So the way I would like to go about it is, yes, I do have some slides that I can share them, but they are more kind of a thinking board than anything else. So here we go. Just give me a moment, please. Okay. So what I would like to share is that I believe for my own clarity and for the benefit of all our students, these are fundamental questions that we start with. What is employee engagement? Why is it relevant? What are its implications? And what are the potential problems from the industry perspective? How can academia collaborate to solve the problems? Probably the first three answers are known to most of the people over here. The only thing is that we need to differentiate employee engagement from employee happiness, from employee well-being, because they're all related, closely associated terms, but they are distinctively different terms. I will just quickly go through those slides just for my own benefit and for the benefit of a few students who are not from the area. So when we are talking about, and I will try to link it to my personal experience at IIT Kharagpur. That's the only thing I can do. So when we are talking about employee engagement, we are talking about the strength of mental and emotional connect of the employees towards their work, their teams, their organizations. So if I ask this question, that I have been with IIT KGP for the last 25 years, there have been some occasions where other opportunities have been available and I have not opted for them. So which are the areas where I find that it makes sense for staying back? Yes, enthusiasm to a very great extent, especially in the early phase of my career. Dedication over a period of time, a kind of an attachment and loyalty to the institute. Love the job, yes, and not the administrative aspect of it, but definitely the other aspects of it. Connected to team, yes, the very fact that we are having this meet here itself tells the story that I'm connected to a very strong team and we are making it happen together. Pride about the organization, pride about the center. So fine, depending on the degree to which these things are there, we have high or low employee engagement. Or for that matter, if we remove the word employee, we can even talk about students, scholars, and their engagement with the place of work. And I think it holds true. Now, from the perspective of the organization, obviously, the concept of employee engagement is relevant because it gets linked to productivity, low attrition, brand advocacy, attracts talent, and leads to work with more dedication. And for the employee, probably it's linked in certain ways with happiness and with well-being. Now, the point is that I quickly ran through these basic concepts that probably many of the people who know over here, but some may not, is to ask this question that there is a lot of research on employee engagement, what makes them engaged, what are the implications of engagement, how is it linked to empathy. We were talking about empathy gap, which is one of the focus areas here. Leadership, which is again linked to empathy, because you see that the leadership and the culture of the institute, the networking, the relationship would make the difference between whether there is empathy or empathy gap, which is whether there is connect, a strong relatedness or not. Identity and creativity, of course. Now, the point is that, as I shared with you as an outsider, what I'm asking about, what I would like to quickly share is, I've already done a little bit of that a little earlier, but my experiences as an academic and as an academic center with interactions with certain organizations and certain industries. Because our focus today is not so much about talking about this employee engagement and empathy gap, as to find out where are the possibilities of collaboration, where are the possibilities of convergence, which are the opportunities that we have for doing something new, doing something exciting and interesting. In fact, Louis' presentation was fascinating in that sense, because there we found a toolkit. We found a toolkit. There are many such toolkits which have been developed. There are many such toolkits which can be developed, which can be refined, and they can link employee engagement with certain other areas. And that is where probably the academia would come in. When we worked with briefly with SAIL and we interacted, we had a training program. They had certain expectations from our center. Happiness mentoring, that we tell them certain things related to happiness, and they carry it forward and take it to their organization. And the other one is how to measure the level of happiness or develop some kind of an index. When we talked when we interacted with CRPF and we are continuing our interaction with Barrackpore police force, we find that one of the interesting areas happens to be assessing the kinds of challenges they're facing, finding out solutions for them, and of course that gets linked to the next area, which is happiness mentor. We have, to a certain extent, before Louis joined us, discussed some of those areas. And what I'm trying to simply say is that, yes, there have been some tangible, concrete collaborations of sorts, which have led to some of this. But the points that I would like to put before the entire board, put before everybody over here, and we are lucky to have Manas sir with us, who has both experience of academia as well as one of the largest employers of the country, the Indian Armed Forces. We have Louis here with a vast amount of experience in various different areas with many industries and firms. And then, of course, we have Mr. Dey, who has worked very intensely and with a lot of motivation and dedication to see what can be done for the police force in the Indian context, especially West Bengal. So here are the points that I have in mind. I don't have solutions for them. In fact, the basic purpose is to raise these issues so that together we can try to see if we are coming up with some tangible things that can be taken forward as a food for thought from this interaction. Mentoring we have done, assessment and profiling we have done, MDPs or FDPs or training programs we have done, fine. But what are the other areas of collaboration? Are there research areas that can be taken up? I had discussions with Mr. Dey, and I know that he also took a lot of insights from Manas sir. I had interactions with him. Various areas where convergence and research opportunities do exist and what can be taken forward. And also development of tangible smart applications and products based on the research that can actually take place. So these are some of the quick thoughts that came, that these are possibly areas where we can work together, and the implications obviously are for our scholars and students in terms of their employability, in terms of internships, in terms of doing very fascinating work. So with these few words, I think I will stop and open it up for discussion amongst everybody. So thank you, friends.
Thank you so much for that insightful talk that you shared with us. So now my question is basically to the panelists out here. So what are your suggestions on how we can actually take this forward in terms of collaborating amongst institutions, or where our students could also benefit by learning?
Sir, can you stop sharing the screen?
I'm trying to do that. I'm not able to find. Okay, I just give me a moment. I've done it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I was trying to. Sorry about that.
So yes, could we come up and discuss on how we can actually take this forward and make a meaningful journey ahead?
We'll do that. But before that, I have two interesting questions for Louis first. First of all, it means the immediate boss is the reason for employee disengagement. Do you agree with this? The immediate boss is the reason for employee disengagement. What is your version about it? And people who disagree are not engaged. Is it a misconception?
So the immediate boss and the relationship with the immediate boss serves as a trigger, no doubt. So even if the person is putting in a lot of efforts and does not meet with success or anything, so the behavior or the way the immediate boss is actually triggers. And then there are other factors which make the person go ahead with the decision, or decide that, okay, let's overlook this factor and move ahead. So
if you go by, I have 40 years in different organizations. One of the common things that I have noticed, that everybody, right from the top boss to the rank and file worker, everybody believes that my personal contribution, credibility has not been recognized by the organization. And when they refer about the organization, they primarily try to fill at the immediate boss did not reach it to the top boss. I mean, this is the fundamental problem. What do you think?
So I think that's basically, we get to see an application of the attribution theory, which we know, so it's always that I'm a person who's put in the best, but it's not being appreciated. And that's how it helps us to sustain in life also. So it gives a sort of a positive feeling to every individual and people feel good. We always have a tendency to evaluate ourselves in a much more positive way than what is actually happened.
I think before I have a question for Louis as well, that post-pandemic we have to rethink about these constructs of employee engagement and empathy and so on and so forth. For example, we have started believing that probably Zoom meetings are no better than are not good for worthy as compared to in-person meeting. If you can save time from commuting to your office, then you will invest that time to your family. I don't think this happens. And post-pandemic, I think engagement has gone down. And I will ask both the panelists about their views on that post-pandemic. That's the concern. Who can respond to that?
So we could go ahead with Louis first, so if you would like to answer that question.
Yes, I love to. Can you repeat the last part of the question, because I didn't hear that? Sorry, Manas.
Yeah, the idea is that post-pandemic, the concept of employee engagement has changed. I mean, I was trying to jot down some of the misconceptions that Zoom meetings are better than lunch meetings. I mean, this is a misconception. Like time saved in commuting is invested in family. Not true. Like work from home won't be engaging. You have to go to the office. Like free flow of ideas is difficult at home. Like team building is not possible from remote working. I mean, all these problems have started coming up. Teleworking is not smart working. I mean, yeah. I think post-pandemic, all these problems have started cropping up, and they are putting some load on our engagement process. What is that we can do?
Yeah, this is a big, this is a big question. Big question, because COVID has changed so much the perception for so many people. And normally I like to give examples, specific examples, because it's very difficult to talk in general about something that is very rooted on personalities. So for example, let me give you an example. One company in Chicago, United States, hires a manager from Brazil, and he becomes one of the top managers at a US company based in Chicago. In Brazil, he's coming from an environment where he was used to push a lot to people to come to the office. So come to the office, you have to come to the office, because his perception is if you are not in the office, you are not working. Because he didn't see them, and the level of trust was very low. So that was the way he was managing in Brazil. He moves to Chicago and he applies that same way of managing. And in less than 3 weeks, there is a huge issue in the company, because nobody understands why he's asking everybody to be in the office when they don't go to the office normally, because the commute to go to the office is about 1 hour and 20 minutes. So suddenly he's bringing this new culture into And he's used to work with that culture. And that was giving him the results he expected into a completely different culture, completely different environment. And he creates a huge conflict. And this person has to be removed from the company just 2 months after, because nobody wants to work with him. So this is an extreme, but this is the reality of what's going on now. It's like there is no one black and white question, only black and white questions to all this. We have to understand what is really the process, the culture, and the personalities behind, because that's the way you are going to create the environment of trust and low stress that everybody is looking for. So I think that right now, we are getting more and more used to having this type of Zoom meetings. We know the value. Imagine not having this Zoom meeting today with these people, it wouldn't happen, because we are not going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars traveling to places because we changed the perception. So now our people are becoming more aware of budgets. The money saved on traveling over the last 2 years is been billions and billions of dollars. So you can look this as, I missed the opportunity to build my team in person, or actually save so much on my budget that I can do this for something else. Another practical example that we tried is to create, instead of 1 hour meetings on the calendar, is 15 minutes meetings. So you reduce the time, and it's like, well, maximum time for one meeting is 30 minutes. So you can go for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. So that's interesting as well, because you compress, and then you have a buffer between meetings, in between minutes, of at least 10 minutes. So the calendar actually automatically creates a meeting with a buffer of 10 minutes. So that gives you 10 minutes for yourself in between meetings, because sometimes you go from meeting to meeting, you don't even have 2 minutes for a break. So I think that companies are trying to do many things. What is true is that people are becoming more and more impatient. It's like, okay, tell me what this meeting is about. Give me an agenda for the meeting before the meeting. And then let's go through the agenda. Let's go straight to what we want to build. That, for cultures such as Indian and Spanish, that change a bit, because we like to create trust by talking and conversations. So that's something that we have to take into consideration as well.
Very good point, actually. So it's culturally so divergent, the idea of, because India is a country where we call it betweenness is more important than withinness, because we are a collective society, and in a collective society, we try to develop confidence, trust, engagement, all through the process of meeting each other.
Yes, Mr. Dey, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
In connection with this meeting on Zoom, I don't have much to add, because policing is a function which is basically connected to a place. So most of the issues with regard to policing, we had to solve by visiting the place, and supervision will be basically incomplete if the officer does not visit the scene of crime, or basically looks into the details with regard to even the law and order arrangement, etc. So the Zoom, the technological help has come handy in connecting people who are at distance and who are not available in quick time. But otherwise, policing function has largely been done with an offset to the online meetings. We have not used much of these meetings to use, except maybe communicating when we are in different places like this meeting maybe.
That's true, actually, because we have to keep the kind of job people have been doing, we have to keep that into our framework before we discuss about these constructs of engagement and impact. And, but what Louis has been mentioning, that, well, saving money, I mean, savings made versus revenue generated are two different models of business. I mean, today probably we are more into saving money rather than, even if we do not generate revenue. But where lies then happiness? That's the challenge.
Yes, that's a big challenge, because yes, these online meetings and it has reduced the travel and other things and costs to a very high extent.
Yes.
But yes, that has an impact on the happiness, because the kind of meetings we used to have with the mid-career personnel in police, especially the ones who are in the age group of 50 to 55, who are due to retire and have some issues in the families with regard to the children's education and their employability. Those meetings had a serious setback during COVID times, and people were not ready to attend these meetings over Zoom because it did not really connect to their concerns. The moment they see the senior officer physically present and even shaking hands and being in a distance which is physically very comforting, the online meeting did not help at all in this regard. And in fact, we have failed that during both these COVID years, 2020 and 2021. Even when we had the assembly elections going through in 2021, we actually could not do much of these things physically, and that had a serious impact on employee welfare in police. Many people had issues in their families, and we could not comfort them or help them in their hour of distress. This was really an issue, and happiness in the forces, especially when they are outside continuously in an environment where they do not see the family members often, the physical proximity of their family members, that is also a very, very important parameter of happiness, which cannot be compensated through online meetings or even online get-togethers.
See the reverse flow. Earlier, we used to tell that if the employee is unhappy in their workplace, that has its impact on family. But today in COVID, what happens with proximity stress, belongingness barrier, compassion fatigue, the workplace is getting affected because of bad family environment. You see the reverse flow. I mean, because I have got proximity stress, because I lost belongingness, because I have developed compassion fatigue, my work is getting affected post-COVID. So this reverse flow has to be also understood from the context of happiness, that how can we make them engage? Let us call it as meaningful engagement. Even if we do not call it happiness, let us call it as meaningful engagement. How this is possible is a challenge today. So we cannot completely overlook the current context. And given that, of course, my last question to Louis as well, I mean, how our students can benefit from World Happiness Foundations. We are interested in knowing from you, because I know you, you know me, but our students don't know much about you. So what is that you can offer for our IIT students?
Well, thank you so much, Professor Manuel Vandal. I think that there are two things that would benefit directly all the students. One is getting access to all the free content that we have, and that's part of the World Happiness Academy. So I can put the link here, but I think that That would be a very powerful benefit. I can put it here. Let me see. I put it on the chat. So just get there and you can get access. The second one is we create every year a big event called the World Happiness Fest. And this year in March, we had more than 455 speakers and experts sharing the insights. And all those talks have been recorded and they are accessible to everybody for free as well. And we do this every year. So this is something very important because we have a lot of knowledge for the last years of more than 1,500 speakers, and everything is recorded. So this is quite a lot that we can do with that content and that knowledge, and everything is available to everybody for free. And the third thing will be becoming part of the community. Being part of the community, sharing, giving. We know that happiness is not about us, it's about giving and sharing. So the more we share, the more we can get. So I think that it is very important to get access to tools and people. So one is what I can do, and then who can help me to achieve something. So I think that that's something they can get with the World Happiness Foundation, the Academy, the festival, and the community. And you are all invited to it.
Thank you. I have a similar question or other point to Mr. Dey, that we have been working together, and he's already aware of the team of wonderful scholars that we have. Do you think that our scholars can engage with the work that is happening in any way? Just a thought I wanted to share.
Sir, it's with certainty that your students can definitely get some insight into a very important functioning of policing, because whatever is seen from outside, you have already observed that a police officer seen with a patrolling van or with that attire is seen to be very powerful. But when they come back, even to the family, in some situation they're ridiculed. And this dichotomy of existence has got a serious impact on the human worthwhileness he can have, worthiness. So this is a major challenge towards a contented person after the day's job. So the students can expose themselves very well to the working atmosphere of the police units at the police station level, at the senior officers level, and in some specialized units, for example, in the CID or the anti-corruption branch or the counter-insurgency units. A police personnel, especially of the rank of sub-inspector and upwards, they are exposed to a very wide spectrum of requirement as an officer also, because when they are investigating, they need a very deep thought process going in with many psychological issues to take up during interrogation and coming up with the inferences drawn from various experts. On the other side, if he is managing law and order, he is engaged heavily with the people management with certain codes, giving him power on one side and on another side obligations on him. So the human capacity of that sub-inspector is tested heavily, almost on a daily basis. And he does not have that much of support either from the organization or from his family, because the family members at times also are not quite appreciative of the effort he may have to exert on field. So these are the issues where behavioral sciences and some of the insights from neuroscience and psychology can help a lot to improve the daily life of an average police personnel. The senior officers, on the other hand, they are well appreciated. Their social status is quite good, and even if they are really working hard, that is the recognition compensates to a very large extent to their effort they are put in. But for the lower rung, it is very difficult situation, and giving himself a thumbs up after a day's work by him only is a real challenge for us. And definitely your students can pick up the data and interact with them and see for themselves how they are doing it, can change a lot of things.
Thank you very much.
So we could take some questions from the audience.
Hello. May I ask a question? Yes.
Yeah, sure. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Luis. I'm sure you're aware of business, GNH of business, right? Yesterday, Dr. Tho Havin spoke about how he has been applying that for businesses in Vietnam and in Switzerland as well, to further enhance happiness within an organization, for the organization as well as for the employees. My question is more about, you are aware of this, so you have developed capitalism on the other hand. So my question is, what is workable in this GNH of business that is not workable for capitalism, and the other way around? Maybe there would be an area of research to engage our scholars in. Just a thought that came to me. Thank you. Your thoughts, just your thoughts.
Yeah, my thoughts are that they are absolutely complementary. A GNH of business is fantastic. And I was part of the work in progress. And I was with you actually in Bhutan when the GNH of business was presented. And then we work on the KPIs. Capitalism is more a mindset. So capitalism is the way we think about the world in a multi-dimensional perspective and interconnected. And that's GNH of business as well. I think that is completely complementary, and we can do a lot of research because capitalism is more the mindset and the system and the interconnection of nature, community, and self with the planet and the overall energy. And GNH of business is a very tangible way to move GNH into business with a specific KPI. Some of them change from normal GNH and some of them evolve. But I feel that it could be an area of research really interesting, capitalism, GNH of business, and how we apply this overall. That would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Any other question from the audience? Okay, then I think we can wind it up for today. So I would really like to thank the honorable panelists for sharing their experience and putting forth their ideas. I would also like to thank them for sharing ideas where joint collaboration could be possible, which was exactly the purpose of this conference and meet. So your thoughts have really made the session meaningful.